Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the transport ship. The planet Kepler 442c looked like Earth's forests, but the air smelled different, sweet and thick, like flowers mixed with something he could not name. He adjusted his backpack and looked around at his classmates. Professor Zekthon stood 12 feet tall, his crystal body catching sunlight like a prism. The alien professor from the Veltar system had taught xenobiology for over 200 years. His voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke to the group of students gathered around the landing site. "Welcome to your final field study," Professor Zekthon said. "This planet will teach you about ecosystem balance better than any classroom lecture." Jake counted his classmates. 9 alien students from 7 different worlds stood in a circle around the professor. There was Vex, a slug-like being from the water world of Aquanus. Krill represented the insect people of Hive Prime, his forearms moving as he took notes. The twins Orth and Arth came from the gas giant Europa station, their balloon-like bodies floating 3 feet off the ground. Jake was the only human in the group. Earth had just joined the Galactic Educational Consortium 5 years ago. The exchange program gave him a chance to study with the best alien minds in the galaxy. He felt lucky but also nervous. The other students had technology he could only dream about. The landing site sat at the edge of a massive forest. Trees stretched up 200 feet into the sky, their leaves forming a green ceiling that blocked most of the sunlight. Professor Zekthon had chosen this spot because orbital scans showed it was safe. No large predators lived in this area, according to the data. "Set up camp here," the professor ordered. "We will spend 3 days studying the local wildlife and plant life. Each of you will collect samples and write a report on ecosystem interactions." Jake dropped his backpack and pulled out his basic camping gear. The alien students had much better equipment. Vex extended a force field generator from his shell. Krill's gear unpacked itself with robotic arms. The Europa twins simply inflated a floating shelter that looked like a small cloud. Jake set up his simple tent and sleeping bag. His equipment came from Earth's military surplus store. Nothing fancy, but it worked. He had learned camping and survival skills in the Boy Scouts back home. Those skills seemed basic compared to alien technology, but they were all he had. The first day went well. Professor Zekthon led them through the forest edge, pointing out different plants and small animals. Jake took notes in his paper notebook while the aliens recorded everything with advanced scanners. The planet's wildlife seemed curious but harmless. Small creatures that looked like flying squirrels watched them from the trees. Flower-like beings opened and closed their petals as the group walked past. By evening, Jake noticed something strange. The small animals had become quiet. The flying squirrels disappeared into the trees. Even the flower creatures closed their petals and would not open them again. The forest felt different, like it was holding its breath. "Professor," Jake said during dinner, "the animals are acting strange. They all went into hiding about an hour ago." Professor Zekthon waved a crystal hand. "Local weather patterns, probably. Some species react to air pressure changes. Nothing to worry about." The other students agreed with the professor. Their sensors showed no immediate danger. Jake felt foolish for being concerned. Maybe humans were just more nervous than other species. The second day started the same way. Professor Zekthon led them deeper into the forest to collect more samples. Jake noticed the silence was even stronger now. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. The only sound came from their own footsteps on the forest floor. Around midday, Jake heard something new. A low growling sound came from somewhere deep in the trees. It sounded like no animal he had ever heard before. The sound made his skin crawl and his heart beat faster. "Did anyone else hear that?" Jake asked the group. The alien students checked their sensors again. "Nothing on my readings," said Krill. "Your human hearing might be picking up natural forest sounds." Professor Zekthon looked annoyed. "Mr. Morrison, please focus on your studies instead of imagining threats. This planet is classified as safe for educational purposes." Jake felt embarrassed but could not shake his unease. His human instincts told him something was wrong. The forest felt like it was watching them. waiting for something. As afternoon turned to evening, the growling sounds got louder and closer. This time, even the alien students heard them. Professor Zekthan checked his scanner with concern. Strange. The readings still show no large life forms in this area. The group hurried back to their camp as darkness fell. Jake helped gather firewood while the others set up their advanced security systems. Vex activated a perimeter scanner. Krill deployed guard drones. The Europa twins created a light barrier around the campsite. Jake built a simple campfire with matches and dry wood. The other students laughed at his primitive method, but the fire gave off heat and light that their electric devices could not match. As night deepened, the fire became the center of their camp. That was when the red eyes appeared in the darkness beyond their camp. Dozens of them, glowing like hot coals between the trees. The eyes stood 8 feet off the ground and moved, with deadly purpose. Whatever owned those eyes was big, smart, and hunting. The creatures stayed just outside the range of their lights and scanners. Jake could see huge shadows moving between the trees. The aliens' technology could not detect them properly, but Jake's human eyes could track their movement. "Professor," Jake whispered, "we need to leave. Now." Professor Zekthan finally looked worried. His crystal body flickered with nervous energy as the red eyes moved closer to their camp. The creatures were testing their defenses, looking for weak spots. Then the attack came. Massive creatures burst from the tree line like living nightmares. They stood 12 feet tall with black fur, razor claws, and burning red eyes. Their teeth gleamed white in the firelight as they charged the camp. Professor Zekthan screamed and activated his emergency beacon. A bright flash surrounded him and he vanished, teleported away to safety. The other alien students panicked and ran for their own escape devices. Vex disappeared into his shell and activated a personal teleporter. Krill spread his wings and flew toward the transport ship. The Europa twins deflated and floated away as fast as their gas bladders could carry them. Within 30 seconds, Jake Morrison stood alone in the camp, facing 6 massive predators with only a burning campfire between them and him. The creatures circled him slowly, their red eyes studying this strange new prey that had not run away. Jake grabbed a burning branch from the fire and held it like a torch. His heart pounded, but his hand stayed steady. He was alone on an alien world with no way home and no help coming. The hunt was about to begin. Jake Morrison held the burning branch high above his head and backed toward the center of the camp. The 6 creatures moved around him in a slow circle, their red eyes never leaving his face. They were bigger than bears and moved like cats. Their black fur absorbed the firelight, making them look like moving shadows with teeth. The largest creature stepped closer and made a sound like grinding metal. Jake waved his torch at it, and the beast stepped back. Fire was keeping them away for now, but the branch would not burn forever. He needed a better plan. Jake reached into his backpack with his free hand and pulled out his emergency flare gun. The alien students had laughed at his simple Earth equipment, but those advanced scanners had not seen these creatures coming. Maybe simple was better. He fired a red flare into the air above the creatures. The bright light made them roar and cover their eyes with massive paws. Jake used those few seconds to grab his backpack and run to the equipment pile that the other students had left behind. The alien technology lay scattered around the camp. Personal force field generators, scanning devices, communication equipment, and portable shelters. Most of it was damaged from the panic, but Jake could see pieces that might still work. The creatures recovered from the flare and started moving toward him again. Jake fired a second flare, this time directly at the ground between him and the beasts. The flare bounced and spun, throwing wild red light in all directions. The creatures backed away but did not run. Jake grabbed Vex's force field generator and tried to activate it. The device made a humming sound, but no shield appeared. Either it was broken or Jake did not know how to use it properly. He threw it aside and reached for Krill's communication array. The communication device had a cracked screen but still showed power levels. Jake found what looked like a distress signal button and pressed it. Nothing happened. He tried different combinations of buttons while keeping one eye on the circling predators. The creatures were getting braver. They came closer each time, testing how near they could get to the fire before Jake scared them away. The largest one had scars across its face and missing patches of fur. It looked older and more experienced than the others. Jake dropped the broken communicator and grabbed pieces of the camp equipment. He found metal support poles from the alien shelters, power cells from various devices, and coils of synthetic rope. His mind started working like it did during survival training back on Earth. While the creatures watched, Jake began building. He tied the metal poles together to make a frame, then used the rope to lash them tight. The power cells went into a pile at the center of his construction. He was making something, but the creatures could not understand what. The scarred leader made another grinding sound and the pack moved closer. Jake had to work faster. He stripped wires from the broken equipment and connected them to the power cells. Sparks flew as electricity jumped between components. One of the creatures charged. Jake spun around and pressed two loose wires together. A bright electrical arc snapped between them with a loud crack. The creature skidded to a stop just 3 feet away, its red eyes wide with surprise. Jake had created a simple electrical weapon, not elegant like alien technology, but effective. He pointed the sparking wires at the creature and it backed away with a low growl. The pack spread out wider, trying to surround him from all sides. Jake realized they were smarter than he had. First thought, these were not mindless beasts. They were hunters with a plan. Jake dragged his metal frame construction to the middle of the camp and started climbing up it. The frame was only 6 feet high, but it got him off the ground. The creatures could jump that high, but they would have to come at him one at a time instead of all together. From his elevated position, Jake could see more red eyes in the forest. This was not just one pack. There were dozens of creatures out there, maybe hundreds. They had surrounded the camp and were waiting for something. Jake used his knife to strip more wire from the alien equipment. He connected power cells in series to increase the voltage, then ran wires around his metal frame platform. Anyone who touched the frame would get a serious electrical shock. The creatures tested his defenses by throwing rocks and sticks at the platform. Jake dodged most of them, but one stone hit his shoulder hard enough to leave a bruise. They were learning about his capabilities. As the night wore on, Jake continued building. He used pieces of the transport crates to make walls around his platform. He rigged lights from the alien equipment to create a bright beacon that would be visible from orbit. Most importantly, he started working on a communication system. The alien communicators were too advanced for him to understand, but Jake found a simple radio transmitter in his own emergency kit. He connected it to the alien power cells to boost its range, then began broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Jake Morrison from the Galactic Educational Consortium Field Study Expedition. Our professor abandoned us on Kepler 442c. The planet is not safe. Large predators have attacked our camp. Request immediate rescue. Repeat, this planet is not safe for educational expeditions. He recorded the message and set it to broadcast automatically every 10 minutes. Even if no one heard it right away, the message would keep transmitting until his power ran out. The creatures seemed to understand that he was calling for help. They became more aggressive, throwing larger rocks and trying to climb the metal frame. Jake's electrical defenses kept them back, but barely. Jake realized he needed to think longer term. This was not just about surviving one night. Professor Zekthon had marked this planet as safe in the official records. Other students would come here unless Jake could warn them about the real dangers. He began expanding his platform, adding more levels and stronger supports. The metal frame grew into a small tower as Jake connected more pieces from the abandoned equipment. He was not just hiding from the creatures anymore. He was building something permanent. By dawn, the creatures retreated into the deep forest, but Jake could still see their red eyes watching from the shadows. They had not given up. They were just waiting for him to make a mistake or for his defenses to fail. Jake climbed to the top of his tower and looked around. The forest stretched to the horizon in every direction. No rescue ships appeared in the sky. His radio message continued broadcasting, but no one answered. He was alone on a hostile world with limited supplies and an unknown number of dangerous predators. But Jake Morrison was still alive, and he was learning. The creatures had patterns and habits he could study. The alien equipment could be modified and combined in ways its makers never intended. Jake pulled out his notebook and began writing down everything he had observed about the creatures, their size, their behavior, their apparent intelligence. He drew diagrams of his electrical defenses and made plans for improving them. The other students had run away when danger appeared. Professor Zekthon had abandoned his responsibilities to save himself. But Jake was still here, still fighting, still building. He would not just survive on this world. He would figure out how to help others survive too. And when rescue finally came, Jake would be ready with information that could save lives. The Red Eyes watched from the forest as the human continued his strange behavior of building instead of fleeing. They had never encountered prey like this before. The hunt was becoming something much more interesting than any of them had expected. 3 days had passed since the attack, and Jake Morrison's simple platform had grown into something much larger. He worked during daylight hours when the creatures stayed hidden in the deep forest. At night, he defended his position from their increasingly clever attacks. Jake had learned to call them shadow hunters because of how they moved through the darkness like living shadows. They were smart, maybe as smart as humans. Each night they tried new ways to reach his tower, and each morning Jake improved his defenses to counter their latest tactics. The tower now stood 20 feet high with multiple levels. Jake had built it using metal poles from the alien shelters, support beams from the transport crates, and cables from various pieces of equipment. The structure was not beautiful, but it was strong and functional. More importantly, Jake had turned his radio transmitter into something much more powerful. He connected it to communication arrays from 3 different alien devices, then boosted the signal using power cells wired in parallel. His distress message now reached much farther into space. On the 4th morning, Jake got his first answer. "This is cargo freighter Blue Horizon responding to distress signal from Kepler 442c. We cannot change course for rescue, but we are relaying your message to Galactic Emergency Services. Hang in there, kid." Jake felt relief wash over him. Someone had heard his call for help, but relief quickly turned to worry as he realized what his message really meant. Other ships would come to this planet. Other people would face the same danger his class had encountered. That afternoon, Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of just calling for rescue, he began broadcasting detailed warnings about the shadow hunters. He described their size, their hunting patterns, and their intelligence. He explained how they stayed hidden from advanced scanners, but could be detected by simple human observation. Warning to all ships approaching Kepler 442c. Jake broadcast. This planet contains highly dangerous predators not detected by standard orbital scans. Do not land at coordinates 23.4 south, 67.8 west. Creatures hunt in coordinated packs of 6 to 12 individuals. They attack at night and show advanced tactical thinking. This planet is not safe for educational expeditions. Jake recorded detailed, behavioral notes about the shadow hunters. They hunted most actively during the 3 hours after sunset. They avoided bright lights but were not afraid of normal campfires. They could climb trees and rocks but seemed uncomfortable with electrical fields. Most interesting was their apparent communication system. Jake had noticed that the creatures made different grinding sounds at different times. Short grinds seemed to mean attack. Long grinds meant retreat. A series of quick grinds appeared to be some kind of coordination signal. Jake added this information to his broadcasts and continued building. His tower grew taller and more complex each day. He created multiple observation platforms with clear views in all directions. He installed motion sensors salvaged from alien equipment and connected them to alarm systems. On the 7th day, Jake's work was interrupted by an unexpected sound. Ship engines roared overhead as a small vessel descended toward the forest. Jake watched in horror as the ship headed straight for the coordinates he had been warning everyone to avoid. "Unknown vessel, this is Jake Morrison on emergency channel. Do not land at those coordinates. Repeat, do not land there. You are heading into a shadow hunter territory." The ship's pilot responded immediately. "This is research vessel Science Explorer. We received your warnings and are adjusting our landing site. Thank you for the detailed information. Can you guide us to a safer location?" Jake felt a surge of pride. His warning system was working. He guided the ship to a clearing 2 miles away from the Shadowhunter territory, in an area he had determined was safer based on his observations. The science explorer carried a team of xenobiologists from the University of Centauri Prime. They had come to study the planet's ecosystem, but Jake's warnings had prevented them from making the same mistake Professor Zekthon had made. "Your tower is visible from orbit," said Dr. Helen Carter, the team leader, when she contacted Jake by radio. "It looks like you have built a proper observation post. Would you be willing to share your research data with our team?" Jake transmitted. Everything he had learned about the Shadowhunters and the planet's real dangers. The xenobiologists were amazed by the detailed behavioral analysis he had compiled. Dr. Carter called his work some of the best field observations she had ever seen. More importantly, the Science Explorer team confirmed Jake's worst fears. Professor Zekthon had filed an official report listing Kepler 442c as safe for educational purposes with minimal supervision required. 3 more student expeditions were scheduled to visit the planet in the next month. "We need to get you off this planet," Dr. Carter said. "But first, we need to update the official records. Your tower has become an invaluable research station. Would you consider staying long enough to help train other researchers?" Jake looked around at his growing tower. What had started as a desperate survival shelter had become something much more important. He had created the first permanent research outpost on Kepler 442c. From his elevated position, he could monitor Shadowhunter movements across miles of territory. "I will stay," Jake decided, "but I need better equipment and more people. This planet is too dangerous for lone researchers but too valuable to abandon. We need to do this right." Dr. Carter agreed to help expand the research station. The Science Explorer carried advanced communication equipment, power generators, and construction materials. Over the next week, Jake's tower transformed from a survival shelter into a proper scientific outpost. The new communication array could reach ships throughout the star system. Jake updated his warning broadcasts to include detailed maps of safe and dangerous areas. He created landing protocols that would guide future expeditions to secure zones away from Shadowhunter territory. Most importantly, Jake established the first formal communication with the Shadowhunters themselves. Using recordings of their grinding, vocalizations, he began sending simple messages from his tower. The creatures responded with what appeared to be acknowledgement signals. "They are not just predators," Jake explained to Dr. Carter during one of their daily check-ins. "They have complex social structures and sophisticated communication. They might even be sentient in ways we do not understand yet." Jake's tower became a beacon of safety and knowledge on a dangerous world. His warning system prevented the 3 scheduled student expeditions from landing in Shadowhunter territory. Instead, those groups were guided to safe research areas where they could study the planet's ecosystem without risking their lives. Word of Jake's work spread through the Galactic Educational Consortium. Universities from dozens of worlds began requesting access to his research data. His behavioral analysis of the Shadowhunters became required reading for xenobiology students across the galaxy. But Jake's greatest achievement was still growing. His tower had become more than just a research station. It was becoming a model for how humans approached dangerous situations. Instead of running away or hiding, Jake had built something that made the danger manageable for everyone who came after him. The Shadowhunters still circled his tower each night, but their behavior had changed. They no longer attacked his defenses. Instead, they seemed to be studying him just as carefully as he was studying them. The grinding sounds they made had become more complex, almost like they were trying to communicate. Jake Morrison had survived, alone on a hostile alien world for over 2 weeks. But more than that, he had turned his survival into a service for all future explorers. His tower stood as proof that humans did not just endure hardship. They built solutions that helped others avoid the same hardship, and Jake was not finished building yet. 2 months after the original attack, Captain Laura Chen of the human exploration vessel New Frontier received an unusual priority message from Galactic Command. A human student had been stranded on Kepler 442c and was somehow still alive. More strange was the report that this student had built some kind of research station and was actively helping other expeditions. "Plot a course for Kepler 442c, Captain Chen ordered her crew. "Let us see what this Jake Morrison has been up to." The New Frontier dropped out of hyperspace near the planet and immediately detected multiple communication signals coming from the surface. Instead of a simple distress beacon, they found a sophisticated network broadcasting detailed planetary information on 17 different frequencies. "This is Jake Morrison at Kepler 442c Research Station Alpha. Welcome to the system, New Frontier. Please stand by for current planetary conditions and landing protocols." Captain Chen was surprised to hear such a professional greeting from a supposedly stranded student. "Mr. Morrison, this is Captain Chen. We are here to rescue you. What is your current status?" "I appreciate the rescue offer, Captain, but I am not in immediate danger. I have established a permanent research outpost here and am coordinating scientific activities for multiple expeditions. Would you like me to guide you to a safe landing site?" Captain Chen exchanged looks with her bridge crew. This was not what they had expected to find. "Mr. Morrison, transmit your current coordinates. We want to see what you have built down there." Jake's response included detailed maps showing safe landing zones, Shadowhunter territory boundaries, weather tracking data, and resource availability reports. The information was more complete than most planetary surveys conducted by professional exploration teams. "He has turned one survival situation into a comprehensive planetary database," said Lieutenant Dan Foster, the New Frontier's science officer. "This level of detail would normally take months of work by a full research team." The New Frontier landed at coordinates Jake provided, 3 miles from what their sensors showed as a large artificial structure. Captain Chen took a ground team to investigate, expecting to find a simple shelter or basic camp. Instead, they discovered a tower that reached 40 feet into the air, surrounded by a complex network of sensor arrays, communication dishes, and monitoring equipment. The structure looked like a professional research facility that had been built using salvage materials and human engineering principles. Jake Morrison climbed down from the tower to meet them. He was leaner than when he had first arrived on the planet, but healthy and alert. More importantly, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had mastered his environment, rather than just survived it. "Welcome to Research Station Alpha," Jake said with a smile. "I hope my landing guidance was helpful. The Shadowhunters have been quiet this week, but they become more active when new ships arrive." Captain Chen looked up at the impressive tower. "Mr. Morrison, this is remarkable work. How did you build all of this alone?" "I was not really alone," Jake replied. "I have had help from 7 different research teams over the past 2 months. Each group brought new equipment and supplies. In return, I provided them with detailed safety protocols and behavioral data about the local wildlife." Jake led them on a tour of his facility. The tower included multiple observation levels, a communication center that could reach ships throughout the sector, meteorological monitoring equipment, and a comprehensive database of planetary conditions. Most impressive was Jake's early warning system. Motion sensors positioned throughout the forest provided real-time tracking of Shadowhunter movements. Computer algorithms analyzed their patterns and predicted when and where they would be most active. "I can tell you exactly when it is safe to travel through any part of this continent," Jake explained. "The Shadowhunters follow predictable territorial patterns. As long as researchers respect their space and follow proper protocols, encounters can be avoided completely." Lieutenant Foster examined the data displays with growing amazement. "This is professional-grade research work. Where did you learn to do analysis like this?" "I did not learn it anywhere," Jake admitted. "I just kept track of what I observed and looked for patterns. The Shadowhunters are creatures of habit once you understand their social structure." Captain Chen realized that Jake had accomplished something extraordinary. He had not just survived on a dangerous planet, he had made the planet safe for others by understanding and working around its dangers rather than trying to eliminate them. "Jake, we have been monitoring your communications traffic," Captain Chen said. "Our records show that you have assisted 19 different expeditions over the past 8 weeks. 3 university research teams, 2 mining surveys, 4 cargo ships, and 10 private vessels have all used your guidance to land safely on this planet." Jake nodded. "The warning system catches most ships before they make the same mistake my original class made. Professor Zekthon filed this planet as safe, so people kept coming here without proper preparation. I could not let that continue. Captain Chen reviewed her mission briefings. The Galactic Educational Consortium had been quietly investigating reports of a rogue research station that was interfering with their planetary classifications. They wanted Jake removed so they could restore Kepler 442c to its original safe status. Jake, I need to be honest with you, Captain Chen said. We were sent here to extract you and shut down your operation. The consortium believes your warning. Broadcasts are unnecessarily alarming potential visitors. Jake's expression darkened. Captain, have you read the casualty reports from planets that Professor Zekthon has classified as safe? His expedition to Rigel 7 resulted in 4 deaths when students encountered acid-spitting plants that did not show up on orbital scans. His survey of Kepler 186f marked it safe, despite the presence of territorial air predators that killed 2 researchers last month. Captain Chen had not known about those incidents. Jake continued. My warning system has prevented any casualties on this planet for 2 months. Every ship that has landed here safely used information from my database. If you shut this down, people will die. Lieutenant Foster was studying the communication logs. Captain, I am seeing rescue confirmations here. 3 ships reported successful evacuation of crew members who were attacked, despite following official safety protocols on other worlds. This station has been coordinating rescue operations across multiple systems. Jake had expanded his operation beyond just Kepler 442c. His communication network had become a hub for sharing information about dangerous conditions on planets throughout the sector. Research teams were voluntarily reporting hazards they encountered so other expeditions could avoid similar problems. This is bigger than just one planet, Jake explained. There are dozens of worlds that have been misclassified as safe when they are actually dangerous. The current system relies on orbital scans and brief surface surveys that miss critical information. I am trying to build a network where actual field experience gets shared between research teams. Captain Chen found herself facing an unexpected decision. Her orders were to retrieve Jake and restore normal operations to Kepler 442c. But Jake's work was clearly saving lives and advancing scientific understanding. Shutting down his operation would likely result in future casualties. Jake, what would you need to make this operation officially legitimate? Captain Chen asked. Recognition by the Galactic Educational Consortium would be a start, Jake replied. Official funding for equipment and personnel, and protection from professors like Zekthon, who want to maintain their reputations instead of acknowledging their mistakes. Captain Chen made her decision. Lieutenant Foster, transmit a full report of our findings to Galactic Command. Include all casualty data and evidence of lives saved by this operation. Recommend that Jake Morrison be appointed as Director of Planetary Safety Assessment for this sector. Jake looked surprised. Captain, I am just a student. I do not have the qualifications for a position like that. Mr. Morrison, Captain Chen said with a smile, you have single-handedly created the most effective planetary safety system I have ever seen. You have saved more lives in 2 months than most career officials save in decades. I think your qualifications speak for themselves. As Captain Chen prepared her reports, she realized that Jake Morrison represented something unique about human nature. When faced with a dangerous situation, he had not just found a way to survive. He had built a system to help everyone who came after him survive better. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could accomplish when they decided to build solutions instead of just avoiding problems. 6 months after his hasty escape from Kepler 442c, Professor Zekthon faced the worst crisis of his academic career. News of Jake Morrison's research station had spread throughout the Galactic Educational Consortium. Worse, the young humans' detailed reports about planetary dangers had exposed serious flaws in Zekthon's survey methods. The Crystal Council of Veltar had received formal complaints about Professor Zekthon's work from 12 different worlds. University officials were demanding explanations for why his safe planetary classifications had resulted in multiple casualties. His 200-year career was falling apart. I must return to Kepler 442c and assess this situation personally, Professor Zekthon announced to the Consortium Review Board. This human student has clearly exaggerated the dangers to make himself appear heroic. I will provide an accurate report that restores proper scientific credibility. The review board approved his return mission, but with conditions. Professor Zekthon would travel with a full academic delegation, including safety inspectors, xenobiology experts, and representatives from 3 major universities. They would conduct an independent evaluation of both the planet and Jake Morrison's research methods. Professor Zekthon expected to find either a dead human or evidence of fraud that would restore his reputation. Instead, as his ship approached Kepler 442c, he discovered something that made his crystal body flicker with surprise. "This is Kepler 442c Planetary Safety Coordination Center," came a professional voice over the ship's communication system. "Welcome to the system, Consortium Vessel Crystal Knowledge. I am Jake Morrison, Director of Planetary Operations. Please stand by for current conditions and landing protocols." "Director of Planetary Operations?" Professor Zekthon sputtered. "This is Professor Zekthon of the original survey expedition. I demand immediate coordinates to the research site I established." "Hello, Professor." Jake's voice remained calm and professional. "I am transmitting updated survey data to your ship. You will find that conditions have changed significantly since your original visit. Your old research site is now within an active Shadowhunter territory and is not safe for landing." Professor Zekthon watched his screens fill with detailed planetary maps, weather reports, wildlife tracking data, and safety protocols. The information was more comprehensive than surveys conducted by teams of professional explorers. "This is impossible," Professor Zekthon muttered. "One human student cannot have compiled this much data." Dr. Susan Walsh, the lead safety inspector, accompanying the delegation, reviewed the incoming information with growing interest. "Professor, this appears to be excellent scientific work. The behavioral analysis of the native predators is particularly thorough." "That boy is exaggerating everything to cover his own cowardice," Professor Zekthon insisted. "The planet was perfectly safe when I surveyed it. These so-called predators are probably just large scavengers." Jake's voice came over the communicator. Again. "Professor, I have your original survey notes in my database. You spent approximately 6 hours on the surface and conducted no nighttime observations. The shadow hunters are nocturnal hunters who remain hidden during daylight hours. Your survey methods could not have detected them." Professor Zekthon's crystal body turned dark red with anger. "You will cease this insubordination immediately. I am the lead xenobiologist on this expedition, and I will conduct my own evaluation." "Of course, Professor," Jake replied politely. "I am transmitting coordinates for a safe landing site 12 miles from my research station. Please note that sunset occurs in 4 hours. I strongly recommend you complete any surface activities before then." The crystal knowledge landed at Jake's coordinates without incident. Professor Zekthon led his delegation across terrain that looked exactly like his original survey site. Peaceful forest, harmless wildlife, no signs of danger. "You see?" Professor Zekthon told the inspection team. "This planet is perfectly safe. The human has created an elaborate fiction to justify his own panic response." Dr. Walsh was examining environmental readings on her scanner. "Professor, these soil samples show unusual mineral deposits that indicate recent large animal activity. Something very big has been moving through this area regularly." "Probably just native herbivores," Professor Zekthon dismissed her concerns. "Nothing threatening." As afternoon turned to evening, the delegation made camp in a clearing 2 miles from Jake's research station. Professor Zekthon set up the same type of basic shelter he had used during his original survey. The inspection team deployed more advanced equipment, but followed his lead in treating the planet as non-threatening. At sunset, Jake's voice came over their emergency communicator. "Consortium team, this is Jake Morrison. Shadowhunter pack movement. Detected heading toward your location. Recommend immediate withdrawal to elevated position or return to your ship." Professor Zekthon grabbed the communicator. "Mr. Morrison, cease this fear-mongering immediately. You are attempting to manipulate this inspection team with false threats." "Professor, I am tracking 12 large predators moving directly toward your camp. They will arrive in approximately 20 minutes. Please evacuate immediately. Dr. Walsh checked her motion sensors. I am not reading anything on our equipment. The shadow hunters move below the detection threshold of standard scanners, Jake explained. They have learned to avoid most forms of electronic detection. I am tracking them using a network of passive sensors and direct visual observation. Professor Zekthon switched off the communicator. Ignore the humans' hysteria. We will conduct a proper scientific evaluation without interference. 15 minutes later, the red eyes appeared at the edge of their camp. Dr. Walsh screamed as massive shapes moved between the trees. The shadow hunters were even larger than Jake's reports had described. They moved with deadly intelligence, circling the camp and testing the humans' defenses. Professor Zekthon activated his emergency beacon to teleport away, but nothing happened. My escape device is not working, he said in panic. That is because you are in a sensor-dampened zone. Jake's voice came over their backup communicator. The shadow hunters generate a natural electromagnetic field that interferes with most technology. I discovered this during my 3rd week here. The largest shadow hunter, scarred from previous encounters, stepped into the firelight and made a grinding sound. The other creatures responded with coordinated movements that showed sophisticated communication. Professor, Jake continued, I am activating emergency protocols. Bright lights and loud sounds will drive them back temporarily. Move to the coordinates I am transmitting now. Floodlights suddenly blazed from hidden positions around the camp. Loudspeakers played recorded sounds that made the shadow hunters retreat with obvious discomfort. Jake had installed emergency equipment throughout the forest to help exactly this kind of situation. Follow the lit path markers to your ship, Jake instructed. Move quickly, but do not run. Running triggers their chase response. The delegation followed Jake's instructions and reached their ship safely. Professor Zekthon was the last to board, his crystal body dim with shock and embarrassment. Professor, Dr. Walsh said as they sealed the ship's airlock, that young human just saved our lives. His emergency response system worked perfectly despite our failure to follow his safety protocols. Professor Zekthon slumped in his chair as the full implications became clear. Jake Morrison had not exaggerated anything. If anything, he had understated how dangerous Kepler 442c really was. The planet should never have been classified as safe for educational expeditions. Over the next 3 days, the inspection team conducted a thorough review of Jake's research station. They found detailed behavioral studies, comprehensive safety protocols, successful coordination with multiple expeditions, and evidence of lives saved by his warning systems. Dr. Walsh submitted her final report to the Galactic Educational Consortium. Jake Morrison has established the most effective planetary safety operation I have ever observed. His methods should become the standard for all dangerous world classifications. Professor Zekthon's original survey was completely inadequate and resulted in unnecessary risk to student expeditions. Professor Zekthon lost his tenure and was removed from active survey duties. Jake Morrison was officially appointed as Director of Planetary Safety Assessment for the entire sector, with authority to reclassify any world that posed danger to visitors. But Jake's greatest achievement was still growing. His communication network had expanded to cover 47 star systems. Research teams throughout the galaxy now shared information about dangerous conditions, creating a database that prevented casualties on dozens of worlds. Universities competed to offer Jake faculty positions, but he chose to remain at his tower on Kepler 442c. The research station had grown into a small city as scientists from hundreds of worlds came to study his methods and learn from his success. Most remarkably, Jake had established peaceful contact with the shadow hunters. Using their grinding communication system, he had negotiated territorial agreements that allowed research to continue safely. The predators were revealed to be highly intelligent beings with complex social structures and sophisticated problem-solving abilities. The key was never seeing them as monsters, Jake explained to visiting researchers. They are apex predators protecting their territory. Once we learn to respect their